people who rise to the top of the hierarchy and start doing bad things to other people. Because ultimately, that is what power is for. It's for you to have an effect on the world. And this is what people don't understand. You can't define a single thing in social justice without contextualizing as prejudice plus power. Exactly. You know, and it's unbelievably transparent, but nobody thinks about what that actually means. Because as soon as you start exercising power on someone else, they're your enemy. Because they're not going to want to just be under your power for no good reason. You haven't legitimately actually found a racist. You've legitimately found someone who's probably an anti-racist, and now you have to shut them up. But anyway, so the more power you have, the more you can change the world to your liking. But the important thing, and this is what really defines everything about their mentality, is that power is not static. If you don't use it, you lose it. So through the lens of power, every single event becomes politicized and dichotomized into that which does not benefit me hurts me. And this is the worldview of social justice. This is why they can't just leave you alone. You have to be under their control, because if you're not under their control, they become weaker for it. This is why it's important for someone to just stand up and say, no, I refuse to comply with you. That's why you have to do it. Because otherwise, they get stronger and you get weaker.
It's true.
So, some recommended reading on the subject. And I just want to, again, just take a quick break from this. There's a reason that these books are considered dangerous. I mean, Machiavelli, when he published The Prince, he was banned for something like 100 years by the Catholic Church. The book was banned. It was just considered heretical because it was part of a collection of part of a genre back in the Middle Ages called Mirrors for Princes. And what this was for, because in the Middle Ages you had a large aristocratic class in Europe. Many of them had the potential to go on to be rulers and kings and dukes and whatnot. So it was popular to create books that would try and explain to them. You got like the opposite of this is like Erasmus's The Education of a Christian Prince, where it was highly Christian. It was very good, very moral, very, what you should be doing to be a moral person. And Machiavelli just came along and said, no, this is all bollocks. In fact, what you need to do is be a ruthless cunt, and I'll explain to you why. And he did, and he got himself in a lot of trouble. The second one is the Conservatives' favourite book, Rules for Radicals, which we all should read. All of you in this, you guys are all radicals, do you know this? You're all radicals. If you're against hate speech, you are a radical. The system is completely opposed to you. If you're against diversity quotas, you are a radical. The system loves diversity quotas. They have them everywhere, in every fucking corporation, all of our government buildings. Every single one has a diversity officer whose sole job it is to give a shit about your race, your gender, and your sexuality. If you want to remove these people, you are a radical. Don't forget it. And the next one is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. This is something that you can use personally and identify. This will teach you when an individual SJW face-to-face is trying to get you under their power, and they always are. And this will teach you how it's done. Really important. These will give you a really good sort of basic understanding of the dynamics and nature of power, but also read history. Almost all of recorded history is the history of power politics. Everything about like Caesar's commentaries, things like this, it's all power politics, and you can see the same things happening. When Dankula did his thing about them co-opting and infiltrating institutions, that's it at work. That would normally be done between nations, between tribes, but instead they do it between interest groups, between hobbies. And I just want to make a note, like, using this on an individual who doesn't know that they're effectively at war with you is fucking immoral. It is wrong to bully people using power tactics when they're just trying to play a game, when they're just trying to hang out and have fun, whatever it is they're doing. That's why SJWs are fucking evil. So what they've done is they've redefined racism to draw the conclusion that racism is any kind of negative consequence to a brown person. And that is not a concept that results in equality. If the aim is to prevent any negative consequences to one class of people, then the legitimate times that they deserve their negative consequences will be interpreted as illegitimate, because you've already defined any negative consequences to the protected group as an injustice. It doesn't matter how you arrive at the conclusion that a black person should be disadvantaged, because we've already decided that one of the fundamental axioms of social justice is that every black person is already defined as being disadvantaged by white people. So through the lens of social justice, they are already the victims of systemic injustice. So anything more the system does, such as disadvantaging them by, say, locking them up for murder, is just adding insult to injury. That person, they don't have any control of their own agency, according to social justice. And anyone who holds a worldview like this will find that the normal enforcement of the laws of the country to be a form of injustice and oppression, even if they aren't the majority of cases. Of course, any benefits that come with the system will be seen as just reparations for harms done, and no amount of free money or special treatment will seem too much. It's not like they had quantified the amount of oppression they'd suffered anyway, and so it just doesn't matter what you personally do, because it's not your fault. So what difference does it make how far you go? What's stopping you? The cult-like chant of the oppressed have the right to hate their oppressors should tell you everything you need to know about who they perceive to hold the power in their dichotomy, so anything they do is punching up by definition. So by definition, anything a black person does to a white person is just. That's what they think. It's nuts, frankly.
Yeah.
This is the mindset of a revolutionary. People like Eric Clanton of Antifa. Can we get a shout out for Eric in prison?
Yay!
I imagine he's getting a taste of reparations as we speak. But this is the mindset of a revolutionary. Right? It's not just morally permissible to bash the fash, it's positively virtuous, which is why mainstream publications like The New York Times will promote black bloc fashion in order that you may look more cool when you smash the state, which is the most bourgeois thing I've ever heard in my life. And what fucking fashion are they talking about? They dress like ISIS. What possible fashion advice could they be given? But this is the thing to remember, right? Social justice is a completely revolutionary philosophy. There can be no détente with them because they want it all. They want control of every system, every space, every hierarchy, because, ironically, they're fundamentally opposed to hierarchy. And instead of forming their own communes and living by their principles, which is hard, they realize it's far easier to brown-nose and rules lawyer their way up any hierarchy using their ability to instill guilt into white men so they give in to their demands, lest they be publicly accused of being woman-hating racists. Anyone here been accused of being a woman-hating racist? Oh wow, look at that. Lots of them. Excuse me, Mr. Black Man, could you put your hand up, please? You're a racist for just being here, I'm so sorry. Actually, no, that's not true. They've got worse terms for you. You know? And this is the thing that's horrible about it. It's like, you're not a person to them. You're not a person to them. But the thing is, if they're opposed to hierarchies of power, why do they try to co-opt them? It would seem counterintuitive. But the thing is, it's all they know. Their entire worldview is viewed on hierarchies of power. And they think that if they can control it all, they can handcraft a perfectly equal world where nobody has power over everyone else. I'm sure you can see why that's going to fail, right? The nature of intersectionality gives it a clear logic, and with only a fairly limited induction into the principles of it, it provides a series of ideological constructs that don't resemble the reality of the situation, such as black people, gay people, and women.
Intersectionality for individuals. How you win again?
I tell you, my favourite part of that whole thing was when Thomas was just saying, if we let people be free, then white men will control everything. Thomas! Oh. I hear he's joining the whole right at this point though, so. But I say women and not women for a good reason, because it distinguishes between the ideological versus the literal meaning of the words. Women is a reference to actual people. People who have the gender of woman. So blanket statements such as like, all women hate Trump, can be disproven by one example. But the statement, all women hate Trump, is true. Because some women are gender traitors in league with the patriarchy because they secretly hate themselves, and that is literally the feminist interpretation of it. This is what the word woman really describes, because ultimately, who else is calling for respect for women? It's not your average woman who's wandering around living her life. She's not the one arguing for this. And in Britain, only 7% of people identify as feminists, so no normal woman's going to walk around thinking that she bears no responsibility for her own actions. And so she's not going to think she's being oppressed by the patriarchy when she breaks a law and is punished for it, or is suspended from Facebook because she hates men, or whatever. They don't think that men inherently disrespect them, because they acknowledge that they personally have the power to hurt other people as well. And so they don't act like a massive bunch of cunts all the time. Unlike some. But women demand your respect. And the only kind of person who demands you respect someone is someone who deep down knows they don't deserve it.
That's right.
Because they're a massive fucking cunt. Yeah! And it's only natural that a massive fucking cunt is going to search out ways of protecting their own ego from having to admit that they're being an asshole. I know, because I'm like that. The only difference between me and them is that I know I'm like this. And so I can actively take steps not to be like that. But this is one of the reasons that I find the behaviour of feminists so distasteful. And it's one of the reasons that they hate trolling the most.
Nice catch!
Trolls are the feminist's arch enemy, because a feminist is demanding your respect, and the purpose of trolling is to deliberately withhold it.
That's right.
You're laughing in their faces and admitting you don't care if they're upset that they think you're scum, or you think they're scum, because it's not illegal. Yes? Probably? Just use a VPN is all I'm saying. It's interesting that they publicly broadcast that they hate trolls all the time, though, isn't it? They constantly go on about it. The SJWs may have legions of rapists, murderers, and paedophiles within their ranks, but at least they respected women. Wow.
I wouldn't even troll you.
You're going to have to do better than that, my friend. When popularising the meme respect for women, PewDiePie was actually popularising the isolation and neutralisation of the ideological construct that feminists use to attack the unwitting but well-meaning folk who suddenly find themselves not much liking the general atmosphere of an organisation after social justice is set in. And the more ideological the system becomes, the more they find themselves with an urge to write a memo. And there's a reason that the far left called it a manifesto. I assume you've all read Damore's memo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a manifesto. It's a statement of science.
Yes.
But in their eyes, it absolutely was a manifesto, because they're biology-denying lunatics. And the reason for this is that the ideological construct that is women doesn't represent the reality of what women are, or even the majority of them, or even some of them. But it's one of the One of the pillars of the ideological construct that is women is that the behavioural differences between men and women are socially constructed, and there is no biological component at all. You would have to be, I mean, really, let's be honest. This is, what was it, George Orwell who said there is something so stupid only an intellectual could believe in? You really have to divorce yourself from actually dealing with people as individuals, like on the ground, to genuinely believe something like that. But Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, don't boo yet, wrote in Fortune magazine after Damore's memo went viral, proclaiming to her woke 8-year-old daughter, and I'm not making this up, literally says, yesterday, after reading the news, my daughter asked me a question. Mum, is it true that there are biological reasons why there are fewer women in tech and leadership?
Yes!
I thought about all this, looked at my daughter and answered simply, no, it's not true. Can you imagine broadcasting this to the world? Your company's currently in the middle of the scandal, and you're like, yeah, okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is go out and deny the biological reality of human beings. But the woke 8-year-old is incidentally another satirical ideological construct in the same way WAM is. It neutralizes and isolates the thing that they're doing. The ideological construct that describes the assumed progressiveness, coupled with a profound knowledge of politics that the SJW's child has expressed completely on their own and with absolutely no provocation from their parent, I'm sure. But the best part about this is they're admitting that their ideology is the unworkable utopian ideology of a child who has no idea of the consequences of their own actions because they've never been held to account for them. It honestly baffles me. Who the fuck is taking political advice from a child? Well, why would you even bring it? My kid said, I'm gonna fuck what your kid said. I don't give a fuck about what you say. These ideological constructs are the product of a series of intersecting beliefs that build on top of each other to create something that would seem to logically exist, but it does not, in fact, accurately map with reality. And when you're not operating in line with reality, eventually you're going to fuck something up because you didn't know what you were doing. If these sort of ideological VR headsets are being worn by a bunch of fruitcakes living in a tent sitting under a bridge, complaining about how their tinfoil hat is failing to block out all the alien radiation, it's not a tremendous problem for society. But these people aren't. They're in our universities. Intersectional social justice does precisely the same thing. Imagine a rich black person accusing a poor white person of being privileged because they live in a capitalist society.
Nice fucking watch, Trey.
Nice fucking watch indeed, Trey. Look at that fucking thing. I'm surprised he's strong enough to lift it. Under social justice, such a ridiculous thing can and does happen because the ideological constructs don't have to match reality. It doesn't matter how soft and pampered Trey is. Doesn't he look pretty? Isn't he beautiful? You know, he looks like a child of privilege, doesn't he? The parts of reality that don't touch the ideological construct have actually already been accounted for as traitorous. If reality isn't with you, it's against you. And anything that is against you has to be suppressed. Now we're forced to operate with an inaccurate interpretation of the world that gets proceedingly less accurate as time goes on because the SJWs are at war with reality. Until suddenly, they can't believe that they're being banned from Facebook for saying all men are scum. After all, they'll only present, like, the MRAs running Facebook will only present their ideological construction of masculinity, which you can satirize as male tears, and dismiss. They do this to you. This is what they're doing. When you're saying, look, I'm upset by that, go, white fragility, male tears. Get fucked. We have legitimate concerns, and you think you can just satirize us by using, as PewDiePie was doing, the term wham. This is why these things are useful. This is why they work. So once you've dismissed their only defense without consideration, and you've established your target as the enemy, a white male for instance, you can do whatever you like. And you will think you have a moral argument with, it's fine, with which to force bystanders to give you sympathy, and from which all manner of power can be drawn, because after all, you are the victim. You can become suddenly famous through a media flurry and suddenly enriched as well-wishers decide to take an interest in redressing the cosmic balance of good against evil in their own small personal way by donating to your Patreon. And I don't mean that as a dismissal either. Ultimately, that's really why anyone donates to the Patreon of someone who's participating in a political cause. But it's usually done by services rendered rather than victimhood claimed. Which, incidentally, is the reason why it doesn't matter if, say, a victim's Kickstarter campaign is years late in completion, or somebody spends their time doing nothing at all. Bit of shade there.
Hand back to Dawn.
And for the people who are, oh, I don't know, say, potential rapists. Sorry, I should be nicer to male feminists, shouldn't I? Just remember, a male feminist is basically Schrodinger's rapist, so... This is the performative aspect of their ideological construct. This is how they act to be moral, by donating to your Patreon. And you only need to be moral if you're privileged. Because, as we've already covered, oppressed people aren't responsible for their own actions, and they don't have the same standards applied to them. This is why SJWs are constantly colliding with the rules of the outside world. As much as the social media companies want to submit to the harsh moralizing attack of the SJWs on their racist, sexist institutions, they can't change the fundamental principles that the institutions are founded upon, because we decided that, in principle, discrimination against protected characteristics like race and gender was bad, because it creates a class of second-class citizens, which is the very reason we made them protected characteristics in the first place. But the ideological lens of social justice gives the person wearing it an inaccurate representation of the power dynamics of the relations between individuals by deliberately omitting certain factors that wildly change a rational interpretation of the power at work. This is why Zoe Quinn can cry out in pain as she doxes you. To her, it doesn't matter if she's the author of pain. She's already defined herself as the victim. And what the SJWs have constructed for themselves is a moral justification for bad behavior. This can't stand. Thank you.
Come on.